Hi, welcome to this week's lesson in higher geography. We are going to be finishing off the climate change topic this week. And you should open up the work tasks for this week, which is this document you can see in front of you. Just to highlight that we would like all work submitted by Friday, the 22nd of May. And that will actually conclude the climate change topic at that point, at which point we will start you on your next topic for the following week, which will be a topic called hydrosphere. Right, what you are going to be looking at this week, if I just show you your topic notes, are the sections of your topic notes that start, if I just scroll back, with the local solutions of climate change. And you are going to be, first of all, what you need to do is read this page, which looks at one possible effect of climate change in the United Kingdom. And we're looking at a specific type of pine tree and how it would be affected. What you've then got to do is answer this exam question, which is worth 10 marks. You need to use some sources, which I will show you in a second. And you must try to refer to your specific named examples. And you're looking to write about at least 6 local points. The first one has been done for you, which you can see here, which gives you an idea about how you should approach writing up the local effects of climate change. The level you would be looking to write to get 1 or 2 marks. And this particular piece of information comes from the case study that we're giving you up here. Right, so let's just have a little look at the work that you're actually being asked to do here. You are being asked to read the local effects of climate change, which I've just shown you. You must then go to this Google Doc, which I've given you a link to here, but I've also put in the main classroom section. And it will outline a range of sources that you can use that talk about the different effects that climate change is going to have in the United Kingdom. Now, what's really important when you deal with any resource, any source of information, is that source of information is credible. Okay, so we know that the person providing that information we trust. And I've picked out 4 sources, which are all for different reasons what I would regard as being credible sources, as in places that have got information on this that we would be able to say, yeah, they're not just making this up. The first one is a film by the University of Glasgow, which explores 2 or 3 kind of effects that climate change is going to have. Both, you'll see there's a part on how the islands of Western Scotland will be affected by climate change. There's a section on how peat bogs in Scotland are going to be negatively affected by climate change, and there's a few other points. There is also some solutions in there, but I'm specifically interested in you using the negative effects, because you are writing about that in your answer, and you need to explain your points. How, for example, how would the Western Isles be affected? You want to use Western Islands and Scotland in your answer with an explanation of the impact. If you use this website, you've then got a nice source that's got 7 potential impacts across the whole of the UK, and that's provided by an environmental agency, Friends of the Earth. And you can use a couple of pieces of information from there. Then you have this absolutely fantastic video that was done sort of a few years ago now. Well, it's been done within the last 10 years, but it looked at a whole range of different effects that we're going to start to see in the United Kingdom overall. And it was done by David Attenborough, who is an incredibly respected television presenter as well as authority on climate change. And it does last quite a while. It's a really interesting watch, so I do recommend you watch the whole thing. What I'd like you to do is watch at the very least a couple of the effects that you see being talked about in this film. If you're still looking for a few more ideas, down here I've pulled up from the Met Office website a couple of impacts that they are talking about based on data that they've got. Okay, so this source here, this particular resource sheet, is going to help you answer that first exam question. And what I would suggest you do at this stage is pause the video and go and complete that task. Okay, I'm assuming you've probably answered this task now, and you're now moving on to the second part of this week's lesson, which is how do we solve the problems? Okay, and the very first step you want to do is read this Florida case study. So what can we do to manage this problem in Florida? And not just what can we do in Florida, but actually what can be done in general? How can we go and solve this problem? And there's a bit of reading I'd like you to do. It links to what has been going on globally in terms of countries agreeing solutions. What are the big agreements out there in the world that are aiming to reduce the carbon emissions? And we've got a particular treaty called the Kyoto Protocol, which was, and when you read this, was the first international treaty ever signed between the whole world or most of the world's countries to try to reduce um, carbon dioxide. And we can see that it's had some impacts. That methane did seem to slow down a little bit, but now it's accelerated again. We can see that carbon dioxide has barely shown any change in terms of, other than the fact it's continuing to increase at a rapid rate, as is nitrous oxide. We can, however, see that there's been one win in all of this, that one of the F gases, in this case CFCs, has really come down because there is now an international ban on these gases. These are the refrigerant coolant gases. You used to find them in your spray cans, actually, deodorant cans, for example. They're now banned internationally, and they have been reducing since that agreement came into force. But unfortunately, other F gases, the HCFCs, and some of the other ones are on the increase. So, I mean, the real issue is it's not working. But do have a read of this. Read this bit about international agreements. Actually, do they work, and why don't they work? And then when you get to the task, which says explain in detail a range of methods used to manage climate change, you should refer to named examples. This is a really big exam question normally when it comes up. And if you are asked this, you therefore need to have quite a lot of ideas at your fingertips if you're answering this question. I've given you one that I've written up, the first solution, and it links to the bit of reading that you'll have just done when you get to this point of the lesson. Anytime you obviously write up a solution, you must try to refer your solution to a named example or include a location, a place, or any kind of detail. So your each point you make should have one of these things in it to show that your point is authentic. You need to describe the solution. So actually tell me what is the solution, and then you need to sort of explain how it would actually affect climate change. So reducing, moving from renewable energy, moving from coal-fired power stations to renewable energies, which is what we've been doing in the UK for the last 20 years, to the point where I think we've only got one coal-fired power station left in the whole of the UK. Obviously, is a solution. And why does it work? Well, because coal-fired power stations produce huge amounts of carbon dioxide when you burn the coal, whereas wind turbines, for example, don't produce any fossil fuels when they generate energy, and they also are renewable, so they don't run out. So that's a double bonus there. So that would be explaining how the solution works. Okay, you need to select 8 things to write about. Okay, on top of the one that we've done. And to do that, I've given you a source. If I just go to the lesson outline, here is managing the effects. I've asked you to read and then use this source here. And there are a range of different things that I'm looking at here. Now, the very first thing I'd like you to do when you start looking at the solutions is, could you please watch this TED Talk? We're now at the point where we can actually not just, there are so many solutions. The list is endless. So what scientists have started to do, and what this guy called Chad Frischman, who is the presenter in this TED Talk, has done, is they're actually weighed up the solutions that are more likely to have a bigger effect over others. And you'll see him talk about, what is the one thing we could do to have the biggest effect? Okay, turning off your lights in your house when you leave would have an effect. And if the whole world did it, it would have an effect. But is that the thing, therefore, we should do? Well, yes, we should do it, but is it the most impactful? Or are there some things we can identify that would have a far larger effect? So he explores this in this video. When you've watched it, you'll then see I've given you 4 links to 4 different websites, all which look at different solutions. So this first one looks at actual things that you can do. And I'd like you to maybe pick up one or two or maybe three ideas of, what can I as a human being do? I don't need to rely on Donald Trump and other world leaders to do this. I can actually do this. And then as you get further into some of these other sources, you'll see that there are some much, much bigger things that you yourself can't do, but certainly has an effect. I mean, you might want to talk about the climate protests that young people are doing. That is a solution. It doesn't solve the problem, but what it does by young people like yourselves going out and protesting in front of our leaders is it influences their decisions, because you guys are all going to be future voters, and therefore world leaders are aware of that and are likely to listen if there are 100,000 people under the age of 18 protesting about the climate crisis. So, I mean, that is a solution. It's a different form of solution, but it's certainly aimed at raising awareness and influencing political leaders. Will it work? Well, that's another question. The final part of today's lesson is evaluating, and my evaluation of that would be in some countries it seems to be working. It is certainly influencing your generation. You guys are starting to act in ways that older generations have not necessarily acted in terms of being aware and sensitive to the problems of our planet's climate. So you have 4 sources. You can dip into each of them. This one here from the National Geographic is a really good source, covers quite a bit of reading, but it covers lots of different sorts of solutions from different angles. This one here, Jeff McMahon, this is a fantastic source. He just looks at 3 solutions, but they're all ones that you probably haven't thought about before. But when you read this source, it's from the magazine Forbes. It'll make you think. Okay, I hadn't really thought that would be a solution to the world's climate problems. So use them to answer this question. And when you've done that, you might want to pause now, because that brings us to the final part of today's lesson, which is evaluating. So when you get to this part of the lesson, you are now being asked to think about weighing up each solution or some solutions. You don't need to do all. So you need to think about, okay, here is a solution. So I need to describe it. So I think building more wind farms across Scotland would solve the problem. Now, when you evaluate that, you won't get a mark for telling me about the solution. What you get a mark for is where you explain the advantages and disadvantages of that solution. Okay. Now you've got 10 marks. So you're looking to select 5 points and give me a positive and negative for each point, or give me a couple of positives, or more than likely, give me a couple of criticisms for each solution. It doesn't matter how many positive and negatives you give. You can have all negatives, you can have all positives, although I would definitely urge you to think about the negatives of each solution. So think about 5 solutions and write about them. I have given you a tutorial, which, if I just go to the main lesson outline here. So this little tutorial, if you watch it, lasts about 10 minutes or so, and I will talk you through some ways to evaluate some of the solutions. So if you'd rather rely on my ideas, you can watch this tutorial and develop up an exam answer that evaluates the solutions to climate change. Okay. When you've done that, hand it in. That is the entire topic completed. And we will be moving on, as I said at the start of today's lesson, to our next topic, which will be hydrosphere. So you have till week on Friday. You've got to the 22nd of May to get this handed in. Good luck and stay safe.